washing and wiping the sins away. The animal sacrifices, as we're learning, conveyed both a temporal and an eternal message to the participants. And that's sometimes a point of contention between those doing studies of the sacrificial system. You'll have proponents of the temporal, and you'll have proponents of the eternal. And really what we're finding that is many times the Torah gives us not an either-or view, but gives us a both-and view of many things. And so that's what we're learning about the sacrifices as well. The blood of bulls and goats is the shadow, and Yeshua is the type. According to the book of Hebrews, the sacrifices of David's day could cleanse the flesh. Oh yes, they could, but they could not cleanse the conscience. That is to say, I understand Hebrews to be teaching me as I read it that only the eternal blood of a sinless sacrifice can regenerate the mind of an individual. By comparison, the blood of bulls and goats focused on the external. So let's turn to Hebrews so that we can draw a proper comparison and or contrast between these two features of blood. Quote, "For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of an heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more," which is a Kal Vachomer argument, by the way, I'll explain that in a moment, "how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serving the living God?" End quote. That's Hebrews chapter 9, verse 13 and 14, rendered from the KJV. Now let's go back and exegete that verse for a split second, that passage. First of all, the writer of Hebrews is using rabbinic logic, which has been identified today as Kal Vachomer. Kal Vachomer is one of the 7 rules of Hillel, of which the writer of Hebrews would have been familiar, because Hillel lived before the time period when Hebrews was written. Kal Vachomer is simply this. It's an argument from the lesser to the greater, or from the greater to the lesser. The writer of the book of Hebrews is trying to get us to understand that the blood of the bulls and goats and the ashes of the red heifer cleans the flesh, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, people. It's not a bad thing that the blood of the animals brought about the wiping away of the stain of sin for the worshiper as well as for the sancta. It's a good thing, but how much more effective, or how it's better if we could also have a cleansed conscience along with a cleansed flesh. I imagine that the worshiper of that day would probably make the connection sooner or later as he brought the animal sacrifices repeatedly, thinking to himself, gosh, I wish there was a way that I could remove the stain of sin from my mind as well. And that's where Yeshua's sacrifice comes in. The sacrifices, performed with a genuine heart of repentance, afforded real life forgiveness, but only to the purification of the flesh. However, the mortal blood of the animals in and of themselves and by themselves could not even take away sin. Only the eternal blood of the perfect sacrifice, to which the animals pointed, of course, Yeshua, could purify both flesh and soul. That's what we need to remind ourselves. Thus, the blood of the animals washed or wiped clean the holy place where God manifestly dwelt. The objective faith of the individual still remained dependent upon God's promised word to come, namely Yeshua himself. Yet his obedience, the obedience of the individual of that day, was demonstrated by adherence to explicit Torah commands where sacrifices were concerned. Yes, if he wanted to walk obediently into God's ways, he had to participate in the sacrificial system. What is more, as I close part A, the salvation of the eternal soul of an individual was always dependent upon a circumcised heart, exactly as it is today.